All right, welcome to the video. Today the subject is variations. So the variation system inside of Rapid Composer allows you to use presets to manipulate your MIDI phrases, but those presets are non-linear and non-destructive. And they can be stacked and you can turn them on or off as you wish on any track and any phrase. So let's dive in and see what it's all about. All right, so let's drag in a phrase and let's talk about the difference between a variation and doing a normal operation. So if we have a phrase here, and yesterday we showed how you can use rhythms as an example, and we used eighth note accented, and I dragged it in and we applied, and it's great. We were able to play that, and that gave us the effect we wanted. But the variation system is way better, and I'll tell you why. When you do an operation like this, and then you go on to build your track, adding more phrases and making more edits, this is already baked in. We can undo it, but it's baked in. We want to add effects and change our MIDI in ways that are non-destructive and non-linear and can be stacked and turned on or off anytime we want. So that's what we're going to show today. We're going to take this, we'll undo it, we'll go back to phrases, we'll click on this, and instead of just dragging it, the rhythm right on it, we'll right click, we'll go to the variation tab, and we will hit the plus to add one variation. You can have many, and you can stack them, and you can turn them on or off at any time. So let's add our first one. And we indeed want to apply a rhythm. We pick that one, and automatically it's set to eighth notes. So we already got what we had yesterday. But now, at any time, it doesn't even matter how many edits we do, and we could, add many different tracks and many different phrases, but this will always be available when we click on it and go to its variation tab. We can apply it or unapply it. And we can go to the rhythms, and instead of applying the rhythm straight on, say we wanted something different, say we wanted an eighth note triplet, we could drag that onto this box and here, and now we can apply this in that non-destructive and a way that we can layer other variations and edits and turn it on or off and or change the rhythm anytime by dragging more in here. That's the way to do it. Now let's talk more about the variation system. All right, so we have another phrase here. Let's quickly just grab the edge, hold down Control, and drag it out to all four measures. And now let's apply our first variation. So it's already selected, so I can right click. And if I'm on a different tab, I would go to Variations tab. And then we can hit the plus button and we get all our options here. So let's add a rhythm. So we add a rhythm, standard of an eighth. And for now, that's great. Or we could go to our rhythms tab again and change it to any one of these hundreds of variations or make our own custom variations. All right, so what if now we have all these sliced up notes? It's very rhythmic. I'm thinking for the next, I would like to add a little bit of humanization, so we can hit the humanize variation. And now we can say, yeah, I want to add a little bit of position variation. So I add 4% of the note position, meaning these are going to slightly move in position to make them not so dead on and machine-like. Then I could add a few percentages of some note length changes, maybe a little bit more, and you could just see them move there. So I've got 9% movement on the length of the notes. And the velocity, this is another way to change velocity of notes automatically. This way we can add some humanization because nobody hits a mallet or anything at the exact same velocity. If you're a human being playing an instrument, it's always going to be different how you hit your instrument. So let's add 5 or maybe even more percent of that. So now they're humanized, and if we turn this off, watch these notes very carefully. They will change just slightly. See that? Off and on. So we've got rhythm, we got some humanization, we could add some more, but I think for this demo, I think you're getting the point. And if we like this, we can save it out as a custom with the heart here. We can hit the heart and add save as and make our own custom presets. And a lot of these panels inside of Rapid Composer come with a lot of great presets, and we'll talk about those more in the future. So we can save it and we can turn them on or off in any order, and at any time we can come back, add more, or adjust. That's great. And if you want to get rid of one, just select and we can hit the trash bin, and that's fine. You're always in control with this. So right now, maybe we like this. So let's just play it. And it's got that kind of human type of feel to it, these short strings. And let's just say that we like that and we want to keep it, and we don't necessarily want to, we want to bake it in and not worry about it in the future. We've decided we like it, and we're going to save it as a preset. So what you would do is you would render it down. So if we switch to the cogwheel, we have rendering options: render phrase with variations and voicing, and I have that on a hotkey. And if you added also some variations with the locks and different types of voice leading, you can render that too. But all we need here is to render the phrase with the variation. So I click that. And now if we go back to the variations, they're gone because it's baked in. So we've created what we wanted in layers, decided we liked it, saved it. Now I can click out of here. I can click again, right? I should not have clicked out of there. I could have just went to the cog. But now I can go and save this. It's been had variations. We've rendered it. Now we're going to save it, and you can save it to wherever you want. And you generally just create a folder in your browser over here. Like I have my favorite folders here, all these rich folders. And the way you do it, and I've talked about this before, but you just select a group that you already have or create a new one. So if the first time that you use this, you would create your first folder, name it, and then you would name the specific item, in this case a phrase. And then when those are completed, then you hit this Save As button right here, and it will create the folder, and inside that folder will be what you named, and it will be a phrase. And you can do that with CC envelopes. You can do that with many things inside of the program. You could select a certain chord progression, and there are ways to save that inside of your chord progression folders. Everything can be edited, saved, and recalled later. All right, next let's talk about other things pertaining to the variation system. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the types of phrases and the types of notes that you use and how that affects, or the variation affects these different sizes of phrases and notes. So some variations are made to affect small phrases, some are large phrases, and some variations don't care how many notes or how long your phrase are, they'll work on any phrase. So we're going to show some examples of that. And today, if we go to our selector here, we're in the default color notes mode. If you're wondering why our notes are not green today, because we're just in this mode, default mode, so that's fine. And we can select this, and we can drag this piano idea all the way across to the 4 measures, and we can give it a listen with the piano. So that's what we're starting with. And now we can right click, and it's already on variations, and we can add our first variation. And we're going to start at the top and just run through them and describe, what type of phrases you might want to use with them and what they do. All right, so the first one is the accents. And so some of them you have to just trial by error and see what they do, test them out. But I would say this one's going to give you variation in your velocity, so accents on your fourth beat, your eighth beats, or your 16th beat. So you could say in this case, well, maybe you want to have velocity changes on your fourth beats. So you would go heavily to the fourth beat, maybe, and you would slowly figure out how this works because you'll see it reflect in your notes here. And say you want a bunch of accent, you want a big amount of change to your velocity on the fourth and the 16th. So let's just test, see what this looks like. You deselect, and we can see that some are very low, so which means their velocity has been turned down a lot. Others are brighter, and we could listen to it. It's way too much because we cranked it way up, but we select again, and then we can go and make some just very slight adjustments, and we can listen to it again. And so we may like those adjustments. If you deselect, you can see physically that there's a slight change in value here. And if you were to render it down, you could even go into your note editing system and see the actual velocities. Because remember, this is a live system, so these phrases right now, if you want to go into edit the actual notes, you would commit and hit the render button. So right now, if I would take this and go into F2 to render the actual notes one by one, I'll hit F2, you'll see that there are no changes to the velocity at all because it hasn't been rendered down so that this edit system at F2 can edit the flattened version of what you just did. So let's go back to F1, and just to prove that, we'll make bigger changes so we can see obvious changes in the velocities. Say something like that. And so now we know there's obvious velocity changes here because we can tell by looking at these notes. And now I would hit the render button, select and render. Now I go to F2. And now we can see all the changes in velocity. I can just drag this out a little bit more. And there's definitely, we can see what the variation did to our velocity. And now we could change it. We could grab this note and you can make more changes, right? More specific changes according to all the systems in these subsystems here. So that's how it works. You create a phrase, and we'll go back to F1. And you can have all these different variations live on that phrase. And when you feel that you want to save it, as we previously just did, as your own preset, you would render it down. But also keep in mind, if you want to start to edit all the different specific notes and go into F2, you would also need to render this. Now you can also use the undo button. So if you still want, if you want to go back to where you started, watch, the render here will go back to being unrendered. See that? Now we're back to, it's the unflattened version, and we right click and we still see the variation, and we're liquid again. We can start doing whatever we want. So it's liquid when you want it to be, but when you want to commit to something and save it to a preset, or take it to very specific editing of specific notes, you can do that too. So let's continue on. Select, right click, and let's go to the next one. And we can decide if we want this on or off. So the next one is add chord notes. So let's click it. And what it's going to do is, when you add it, you'll see the effect on your phrase. So we can already see an effect. And it's adding chord notes, and you can decide how much polyphony. If I deselect, you'll see it go back to where we were before. And if you want to start it from scratch, you can always just temporarily turn off the accents just to have your pristine, original. But let's turn that back on so we can see it's adding chord notes, simply as what it says on the tin there. But you can also decide what type of chord notes and the intervals. So you may want to have different types of notes, and it gives you options here. And you can see it reflected instantly, and you can play it instantly. And you can start to decide if it's something that you want for your particular phrase. And you can turn off or turn this on, which will mute your original notes. So now you're just hearing what it's added. And you can also turn up the polyphony and just add a whole bunch of notes. And that's a musical idea that's sounding different, kind of interesting. Now I'm going to turn it off. That's the original. And it really thickens it up in a musical way. Just turn it on. And now we may want to try a different interval. And let's try something else. So these phrases often add all kinds of interesting ideas that can be edited and again turned on and off, and we could turn the accents on. So, you can have many different effects. So the accents are turning this down a little bit too much, so I'm going to turn that way down, just get a little bit of variation in the velocity. Now it should be louder. So let's just sit back and think about this for a second. How powerful this is once you start paying attention to your notes, and once you know all these variations of what they can do, you could go in at any time and adjust them and then save them out as your favorite. Or you could collapse it and save it as a phrase and name it forever. I mean, it truly is non-linear, non-destructive way of experimenting with your compositions. So next we will add even more variations. Now let's add the next one. And this one's called add interval. So it looks like it's similar to the last one, but it's not chordal. It's more just intervals for the notes. So again, as soon as we add it, it's already turned on. So we can just turn that off and see the difference in notes. So we started with this. And notice I turned these two off so we avoid confusion, but we can turn them back on. So that's what we have now to start. Now we turn on the interval. And we mute the original notes. And we have the choices of even more intervals here. So a third above is always pretty neat. Let's crank that up with polyphony. And let's compare what we originally had. And turn it on. And you can just hear how much more interesting and richer it is with that third above on each one of these notes. Not in a chordal way, but per note. And you can just experiment and crank it up. It's a little bit too much for a third, but I would say around here is probably interesting. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, so that is really neat. We could try a fifth. Usually sounds pretty good. And let's try something like a seventh. And we could just add a few notes, a few extra notes. And let's see, let's compare it to the original if that's adding anything. And it's changing the notes because we've turned off the original. But if we turn back the original notes on and just add a little bit, a slight amount of polyphony there, not too much, just a little bit of the seventh above. That's a little bit out of control there. Let's go to the third. So it's what effect you want for each phrase. And I like it with the original notes muted with, let's try the 7th. Now let's compare that to the add chordal intervals, or we could just stack them. Let's go back. Oh, I turned my, let me just turn off, in the background, I had mistakenly turned on the DAW's playhead. Okay, so now we're back. All right, select, and let's play this from the start. And then we could add the accents, so, you know, you don't want to go out of control because you have so many options. But I would say a good way to use this whole system is to start with a really nice musical idea. Know generally what you want after you've studied all these different variations of what they can do. Then add a couple variations, but turn them up slowly until you get the effects you want. And then maybe add some other variations, and you'll end up maybe just with one or two. And then if you really like it, save it. But you can see how there's so many options, and it updates live as you go. So, you know, it's a very nice system for trying out all kinds of intervals here. Next, on to what we have on the list here. So next we've got adjust note length. All right, this is a pretty neat one. Now let's turn all the past ones off. So we start from scratch again. Now we notice immediately that the length of these notes has increased. We turn them off and we start back at where we were. Turn them back on. So it's, in this case with the piano, it's acting like sustain to the notes. And if we like that extra sustain to these notes, then that's exactly what it says down here, sustaining notes. But you have a whole bunch of other options. So instead of just completely sustaining those notes, you could you don't want full notes, you just want maybe half sustained notes. So comparing, now the notes are just slightly longer. See, these notes are slightly longer, but it's given it a boundary not to go too long. So now we could listen to that with the interval from the last one, but we could turn down the polyphony and we could say we just want a third above with the muted original notes. Now let's listen. So you get what you want step by step, and you can always check and compare at any time. It's really great. You just add touches of what you want. This piano, okay, I wish the notes were just a little bit longer and there was more sustain. Okay, go to adjust note lengths, add a little extra sustain. While you're here, test out and experiment with a bunch of other options. So that's the way this goes. All right, so for this next idea, we're going to use a variation. But remember I talked about the different sizes of phrases that you start with, and variations affect them differently. So this one, I'm going to take this and I'm going to grab the edge, and I'm going to hold down Control and duplicate this phrase, and now it's 4 measures. Then I'm going to hit the Alt key and I'm going to divide it, and I'm going to do the same thing and make this. So now we've got these different pieces here, but they still sound the same, but they're divided up. All right, so now I'm going to select the first one. I deselect all of them, then select the first one. Now I hit my right mouse button, and I cleared out the variation so we can concentrate on this next one. So we hit the plus, and we add apply melody. So in this case, apply melody, you can experiment because there's a lot of different things you can do with this. But I find that it works best when you want to add a melody to, you may have a phrase that just repeats, but you want it a little bit more melodic in certain places. Just add a little difference as it goes through its chord changes. So let's try and do that here. Now we do see a difference because now it's got a box and is saying, well, we want to apply melody. So when it has a box with these different little lines in it, that tells us we can drop something into the box, which is going to affect this variation, which is going to in turn affect our phrase. So let's do exactly that. But let's look at a melody generator down here. And there it is. And we know every time I select and click on it, it will give us a different version up there. So we have endless randomization within the constraints of what they consider to be a melody inside this generator. All right, let's drag one in. We hold down our mouse, we drag it into the box with the lines. It turns green, we let go, and now instantly we see it change this first phrase. Now we can make some adjustments here. We could just play it, and that's generally not going to give you the results you want. But now let's make some alterations here. And let's say that we want the melody transition. You see how just the melody is moving up and down? That's really the melody that we're adding, right? So the melody transition point you can control here. And I like the melody notes to be higher than the regular notes, but we can put it in about there. And we can say you want to remove the higher notes than the melody if there were. So you can try that, but there isn't any because we made these to be high notes. You can use the accent or the velocity changes from your dropped in melody if we want. So we could turn that on and affect all notes vertically at the same position. You can experiment with that. But for now, I'm going to leave that off. But let's just take a look, comparing it to basically what we started with. So we started with three, kind of a chordal idea, and now we've added some melodic notes in there. But this is just a starting point because we can endlessly just make variety until we get something we like. Let's listen to the first try. Now I kind of like it, but this note is way too small. Now I could just render this quick and drag it out at F2 in the note editor, and I would also move this, and we would have a melody above our consistent notes in the rest of our track there. But since we're here, let's just drag in some more ideas here. And now it's done what it says it's going to do, add some melody ideas to your phrase. So in this case, you would want a small phrase as part of a bigger idea. In this case, we just want to add a little spice, some melody notes, and we're getting that. And then what I would do here is, well, first of all, I would try some more experimenting, and let's play that. And these two notes, I would just change this note. I would move it up and I would drag this one out. And so let's do that really quick. So we hit R to render it and we go to F2 and I can simply drag that note out to where I want it. And I can put that note where I want it up there. And I could say maybe I want that note over there. And so that they follow the chord notes. Very simple to do. And now let's play it. And we have a melody for our selected little groove here, these four measures. I wanted to change one of them and give it some extra melodic notes, and that's exactly what we got here. So again, that's one variation, and you can experiment as much as you want. All right, for the next one, we're going to use three measures with this interesting shape of a piano. That's a little bit low. Let's just drag it up a little bit. Okay, it sounds pretty neat. Let's affect the first one here. So let's hold down Alt and just give it a snip there and divide the two. Deselect, reselect, right click, and let's add the next variation. So plus, and we've done the apply rhythm idea. Um, but apply shape, let's do that. So what happened to it is disappeared, but we have a box here and it's saying, please drop something in there. At least that's what it's saying to me. So and if you didn't know on your browser interface, since look how far down you can scroll, and if I opened up even more submenus, if you don't want to always scroll around and you want to go back to the top, it's got a very handy little device up here where you can just select that and it puts everything back into its folders so that you can get back to where you want a generator. So that's very handy. So it folds things out and then it folds things back up. So you can always get back to your starting place. So, okay, so it's asking for something to apply a shape and it's got a box to drop stuff into. Let's drop an ARP in there. That's kind of a shape, but with more notes. Let's drop it in the box and let's see what we get. We still have a shape, but it's compressed it and it's made kind of a mini ARP out of it. So let's just listen from the start. Yeah, really interesting. It's done again what it said it would do, but you want to feed it the right size of phrase to start with. So we had a phrase that was just a repeating shape of a piano tune here, a little piano idea. And let's say that we wanted to break it up with something a little more rhythmic, but that maintained the shape of the original idea. And we still get that kind of wedge with a long bottom note. And it sounds kind of neat. And then from there, we could slice and dice and add different variations and maybe add some accents to it and inversions and. But the idea here is what's important. It's basically taking something that is repeating, but keep making it different, but still within the constraints of your original idea. I think what I would like to see in the future with apply shape is a slider where you can apply the amount of that new shape that you've dropped in here. But again, it's doing what it says on the tin. It's applying a shape to your repeating pattern to add some difference, but it still applies and works musically with the other parts that you have here. So very good. You could move this up and you could flip it around. You could do a lot of stuff with that. I just like the idea that you have so many options to mess with MIDI, chop it up, flip it, dice it, slice it, save it if you want, or just stack on top of it. So next, let's try something else. All right, so the video is dragging on a bit. So if I do all the variations, it's going to go on for over 3 hours. So let's try to speed this up. Got a new little jingle here. If I right click, we can go to add the next variation. And so the next one would be delay notes. Now this one just simply delays the note. So if you want to use this for a mechanical reason for some notes, it's more of a toolbox situation where you can delay whatever notes for whatever time you want. So that's more like a toolbox situation. It gives you another tool that you can use in your musical toolbox. Let's delete that. Let's go on to the next one. Double note, this can be handy because it gives you musical rules and it will double up any notes that according to these rule sets. So let's say you have just the odd beats and you want to double just the odd beats. So now we see these beats are doubled here. So, and let's say you want to just double the even beats, right? So now you see the even beats get doubled. So just again, another tool for your toolbox. Let's get rid of that. And let's go to the next one, double note, double phrase. I think that's pretty obvious. It would be the same thing if I took this phrase and I held it and compressed it in and then held down control and doubled it, but you're doing it in a much faster way. So yeah, well, let's just undo that, and select it, and we'll see the double phrase. And it has no other options, but it allows you to double the phrase really quick. So again, another tool in your toolbox. Next up, extract notes can be really powerful. And let's just, it comes with two of them already on, but let's skip the second one. If I, let's delete these, so rubber band, or do your hotkey and delete, and quickly just go Shift H, and we have chords, and I just want to have a bass note. One of the ways, and there's several quick ways to do it in the system, and I've demonstrated some, but one way would be very quick. It would be to select, go and extract the note, and again, you skip that one, but just have one active. It's all you need. But just make sure you want it, have it on the root, and we do. So it's already set up. So if we turn it off, we see that we have a triad, we have chords, but I just want the bass note on this track. That's exactly what we've done. Just extract the bass note, and that's what we're left with. Now we've got this idea. Let's right click, and it's already open, and we go to add. And I'm just going to go through these because, you know, it would take so long, but I'm going to just speak through them. I think you're getting the idea of how these work. Whenever you get one with a box, a drop-in box, drop in the thing that you believe would be the most appropriate phrase or rhythm or melody to drop in according to what you're trying to do. And I think you've got a pretty good idea. Extract notes, very powerful for divisi and or making bass notes very quickly for your long track. Extract rhythm, you basically take something and extract the rhythm instead of dropping rhythm on it. You could extract the rhythm of something that you like and save it as a rhythm. Follow track rhythm, not sure what that is, but that's probably something to do. You could figure that one out. Humanize, very simple. It allows you to humanize things. And I think we talked about this in the last video. I've made quite a few, but humanize it just works really well, and it affects the position, the length, and the velocity. And you can set in percentage exactly how you like. So you can see it there. We turn that on and off, and you see how that works. And let's just trash that for now. Next one would be insert connecting notes. And sometimes you have a phrase and another phrase, and you just wish you had a couple notes that would connect between the two. This will join some notes and connect. This will join some notes. So, you know, it's pretty self-evident. Insert connection to the next phrase. That would be similar to what you would get with the phrase morpher. And at some point, I'll demonstrate that. But long story short is you have a phrase here, and you have a phrase here, and nothing in between. And these type of variations and generators will generate something musically in between that's appropriate from here to there. I'll show that at some point. Make monophonic, it just will compress it down and make it into a mono type phrase. MIDI echo is kind of a MIDI form of reverbs, kind of. Mirror is obvious. Mirror horizontally and vertically. No mystery there. You can see the difference. And I won't even do vertically because it'll just flip it vertically. And let's go to the next one. Uh, Permute chord notes. So this allows you to, I believe, just get rid of certain chord notes, but I don't see any options there. Now, this could be something for the future that the developer hasn't really fixed up yet, or it could be it's not doing anything because it doesn't have the correct phrase to do it with. But we'll leave that for now. And so let's put that in the trash for now. Next, quantize. Pretty obvious if you used a DAW. This will allow you to set some quantize ideas, and it gives you a lot of different ways to quantize and the amount. And so very handy there. So we will put that in the trash. And next is rhythmize a phrase. And that would be similar to changing the rhythm and extracting rhythm from somewhere else and applying it. So, yeah, I think we've talked about rhythm. Remove a note. You can remove notes according to certain musical rules, I believe. Remove short notes. Very handy if you have, let's say, let's delete this. And let's say if we have something with a lot of notes like um, a staccato generator. Now, if we drag this in, that's a lot of notes. If we turn on remove note, it will remove notes according to the slider. Very handy because you may have a really thick and too much rhythm, too many notes for a staccato or for your strings, and you just want to go in there and according to some rules, and you can set up those different rules, or you can use the slider, all short notes. You can start to remove and add. See, those short notes just disappeared. So if you had hundreds of notes and you just hated those short notes and you want to extract them really quick, you could use something like that. And you can make some adjustments. So yeah, that can be handy too. So let's turn that off and let's go to the next one. Remove note, remove short notes. It's probably similar, but giving you even more options and more control. Rest, we'll put in a rest here and there. Yeah, rhythm mapper, similar to other rhythm ideas, but I'm sure it's probably even offers more ideas. Rotate the notes. Really neat if you just have you have repeating phrase and it's another form of being able to just take one part of it and start to rotate some notes to give you more ideas and break up the monotony. It's really neat when you have very specific phrases, like very specific finger picking or piano, and you just want to rotate those notes a little bit on, say, one part of your phrase for one chord, and it'll just give you an extra little bit of flavor, but it will maintain the notes for the chord, and it will maintain what you have going on, but it'll just rotate them a little bit. And you can dial that in how you like it for a little bit of change between just copying and pasting. Hide and show non-existent chords. Let's see if I can remember what that is. Action. And I don't see. This could be hide show non-existent chord notes. So if there's a note that it's a non-existent chord note, you can show it. So if it's not part of a chord, you can hide or show it. So I really haven't looked into that one too much. Let's move on to, that could be handy if you want to just make sure everything's chordal or, okay. Simplify phrase is neat because again, it just as a whole, it will simplify your phrase, takes away all those short notes and just makes it way more simple as far as notes. It's just another tool in your toolbox to affect a whole bunch of notes without having to go in there by hand. And if it's just too rhythmic, just too much going on, but you like how it sounds, you like the chord, you like where all the notes are, it's sounding great, but it's just too busy. Well, just start to slide in the amount of busyness you want or don't want. I would say that's very handy. And slice phrase, ways to slice and dice a phrase. Spread out chord notes would be really neat because it does what it says. You could start with notes like what we just had. They're very close together, and that might be messing up your low range, making it muddy because those slow frequencies build up and bounce around and cause muddiness. Maybe you want to take a phrase that has a lot of low notes and spread them out, and then you get way more clarity with orchestral instruments. Another very handy tool. And staccato, legato, I believe that's how you can have notes start to overlap. And like a very staccato note is a very short note, great for short strings, what we were listening to earlier. But if you want legato notes that might start to overlap, you might want to try that out. Next, strumming, and that will make, it will, I believe, break up the start of your notes. And this probably isn't a great example, but it's giving you a tool to delay the starting point. Now, you watch the beginning of these notes. And again, we probably need, let me just delete that and start with something a little fresher. That probably a chord would be the best idea for that. So now if we go back to strumming. So now watch the start of these notes. We should be able to see you're adding a strum delay. So, but they're over, this note is moving over this one. But if you had a chord that you wanted strummed for a guitar VSTI that you have connected here, you have a bunch of options here to create custom strumming. So another handy tool. And swap chord notes, probably just moving, if you have a chord note with a certain voicing, it's probably going to swap those out so you can just try out and experiment with many different types of voicing really quick. Swing is simply adding swing, I believe. Transpose, transposing them up and down. Triple the phrase, probably literally tripling it. Velocity, these three last ones all have to do with making very custom velocity, and they give you all kinds of tools here, including a function generator, similar to what you find in your MIDI CC variations here if you were to add MIDI or envelopes for any type of CC data. So it's giving you really neat ways to change the velocity of all these notes. All right, my mouth is dry. I need a break. Here's what you need to really remember about the variations. They're non-linear, non-destructive, but when you do find in all your experimenting something you like, you can quickly save it in that state or compress it down, save it as a preset, or compress it down and edit at a note level in your F2 note editing mode. And all these tools work together with all the other tools inside this program to just make it one of the best tools ever for editing and experimenting with your phrases. Hope you enjoyed the video. There's more coming. There's still so much more to talk about, and the best parts are still to come. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.